Let's now get the insights of UP Los Baños Senior Economics Lecturer Enrico Villanueva. So Enrico, welcome to the program.
Good evening, Menchie.
Well, we just heard our correspondent's report on the economic team's first ever briefing in Dubai. What is your take on this strategy to court investors from the Middle East?
Okay, looking at the data from the FDI from BSP website, we would notice that the foreign direct investments from Middle East are actually quite low. So in terms of getting new investors, that's good. Hopefully, the cabinet had done their pre-homework, such that they've actually explored potential investments in this country. So we welcome the diversification of FDI sources by the government. Because traditionally we're very much reliant on Japan, Singapore, and US. So this new foray is good. Now, on one hand, that's good. The flip side would be, is it the right time to do it? So there's still some very conservative outlook about growth. So we may not have a hard landing globally, but we may have a soft landing. But still, there's still no talk, let's say, for instance, of lowering cost of borrowing in terms of rates, etc. So not sure if this is a perfect timing. So the direction is okay in terms of diversification of sources. Not sure if this is the right time to do it now.
Well, you mentioned FDIs, not the, foreign investments. Definitely, the economic team needs to ramp up investment promotion efforts. So the latest Bangko Sentral data show that foreign direct investments net inflows plunged by over 20% in the first half of 2023. So what key factors led to this decline?
Okay, the main factor would probably be the outlook, the economic outlook. As we've said, there is still inflation threatening the whole global economy. And because of the inflation threat, central banks around the world have been raising rates. And that has a dampening effect on investments, not investments and aggregate demand in general. So with high cost of funds, it may not be maybe difficult for new investments to be financed. And then we also noticed, for instance, that for the first half of the year, from January to July, in an 18-month period or 1.5-year period, beginning January 2022 to June 2023, the lowest levels of FDI were actually seen this year in January, May, and June.
Yes,
so
and the BSP itself,
it's a bad timing for now.
The BSP itself flagged investor concerns over weak growth prospects and global uncertainties, as you mentioned. So how can the Philippine government and or the private sector allay these doubts that may discourage more investments?
One factor would be look at their selling points. So there has to be, to be honest, right now there are more negative points than actual selling points. I would have wanted personally, for instance, that the government focus first on fixing the good things that needs to be fixed, like infrastructure, for instance. Many empirical studies have shown that infrastructure is one of the main determinants of foreign direct investment.
Well, you said that there's a lot of negatives that need to be fixed, but Japan, Germany, the US, and Singapore are the top sources of equity capital placements in the first 6 months of the year. So what do you think is attracting these countries to do business in our country? What do they see in us?
What I'm saying is that these are the traditional sources of the FDI, but there's a decline in these traditional sources.
Okay.
For the US, for instance, in this first half of the year, there's a noticeable decline. So meaning they're holding back. So the outlook itself is a preventive factor or a factor that's causing them to maybe delay their investments, for instance, at this point.
Well, manufacturing is the top industry benefiting from foreign capital placements, followed by financial and real estate sectors. So how will these investments boost local industries and in turn the Philippine economy?
Of course, any form of foreign direct investment would normally bring in jobs and also income. And generally, it's a plus for the economy. What we're just saying is that there's a decline in this inflow, but still, there are still inflows of coming from Japan is the biggest one for this month, for instance, followed by Singapore. So that's still good in terms of jobs, and hopefully it will help in the arresting the slowdown in growth for the Philippines.
Well, the government
We've seen slowdown in growth in both consumption and government spending.
Well, the government
Yes,
has enacted reforms seeking to court investments, like amendments to the Public Services Act, Foreign Investments Act, and Retail Trade Liberalization Act. Just recently, President Marcos signed the Maharlika Investment Fund into law. So what other measures must the government enact to better attract investors?
I've said earlier about infrastructure. If you look at the empirical literature in factors that affect or attract foreign direct investment, it's repeated in many studies in various countries. The infrastructure. So infrastructure would come in the form of infrastructure and like services aligned with it to enable business. That would also include things like electricity. So government has certain projects in terms of infrastructure. That's good. But it also has to have more activities in terms of lowering or bringing down the cost of electricity, because that's a major factor or a deterrent for foreign investors. Within Asia, for instance, we have one of the highest costs of electricity. So I think government has to spend more effort in trying to bring down the cost of business.
Thank you for joining us, UP Los Baños Senior Economics Lecturer Enrico Villanueva.